Yes, friends, glad to have you tuning in again. We have a problem here. If I go ahead and press coffee, grind here now, we do begin to grind the coffee beans. And the brew group also starts moving upwards, right into the brew group. And then the pump starts pumping, that works too, so it does pump water, but almost nothing comes out at the front here. As you can see here, almost nothing is actually coming out. Now, of course, you might think the pump is broken, that it's not doing much anymore. But if the pump were broken, and you turn on the hot water here, open it. It works just fine. Freely. So you can pretty much rule out the pump here. My suspicion in this case is that the brew piston is clogged. So down here you have the brew group, where the coffee is ground into, and then it moves up and goes into the brew piston, and I think the brew piston isn't letting any water through. And today in this new video, I'll show you exactly how to access this specific brew piston and how to clean it up. First, turn off the machine, not at the back, pull the plug. No, we don't do that. Instead, turn it off here at the switch. The primary advantage, of course, is that when we finally press off, right here, our internal brew group returns to its home position, so that we can then pull out the brew group from the side. But I'll show you that in more detail in a moment. We unplug it. And of course, we also make sure that no one can plug it back in while we're working here. Now we are going to pull out a lot of different things. First, we have the grounds container. I usually call it the coffee grounds container, and the machine also calls it the coffee grounds container. So we will pull that part out right now. The tank we don't need right now either. So now we have, of course, in here, on this side, the brew group. Now we have here on the right and left, two red push buttons. You can press these two buttons together right here, and then you can carefully remove the brew group. If you find that the brew group is stuck at this moment, it is usually because of these arms in the back, specifically that they haven't fully retracted yet. That means it gets stuck there. In that case, you need to grab here, the lever. You need to firmly grab the lever right here, then push it all the way in, and slowly move it upwards. This way the lower lever moves to the back, and then you can basically take out the brew group. So that's basically the lever. That's how it works. And the piston located at the front then moves in a vertical direction up or down. So, but we have to put it back together again because that's the starting position, otherwise we can't install it. Like this again. So for now, we don't need the brew group anymore either. Up here inside, so you can't see it now, up here inside is the brew piston. We can't get to it just yet, so we'll close the access flap again. And now we'll loosen it at the back. Now I already have coffee grounds on the ceiling here. So now we'll turn the machine around. So if you look at the layout, you have one screw here, another one right over here, one more down here, and then right over here by the power supply unit, there are two Torx screws. It is important to note that these are security Torx screws which have a small pin in the middle, screws that have a pin in the middle. There's a hole in the middle. That's intentional by the manufacturer, so that not too many people can mess around with the machine. By the way, the Torx bit used here is a T15H. And now we'll go in with it. If we can get in here, now we're in. Carefully unscrew the 5 individual security Torx screws located on the back casing. So now that those are all removed, we can very gently lift up the rear back panel assembly right here. So carefully tilt up the bottom of the coffee machine so that we can successfully take off the back panel. Alright, now it's relatively easy. It's assembled. Here you have the grinder, which is actually the largest component of the coffee machine. the grinder, then here you have the pump units, and up here is the electronics. That's basically it from this side already. For example, here it can also happen. If you look at the water hose here, on the other side you have the container. If a bit of coffee grounds falls out and you push the water tank in, this can easily get clogged here. In here, in that case, you have to remove this pump, but that's another topic. So now we're done here for the most part. Now we'll unscrew the two Phillips screws. Now let me remind you to take the beans out from up here, because otherwise, if you tip this thing, all the beans will fall into the machine. So the beans should already be out by now. Alright, you just pull this thing out and remove it downward. We will not be needing this for now either. Now right up here in this section is where all the control electronics are housed and located, but we don't need to go there just yet. Now you can also see a screw right here, which is a Phillips head screw, and we will loosen that as well. The assembly we also grip from the side again. And up here you have these notches, so you insert it at the top and then slide it back into place. So if you don't know this, because I've already seen someone poking around here with a screwdriver and so on, then the whole edge at the front gets damaged. This is the easiest way to do it. Alright. So now we already have the motor right here. That effectively lowers the brew group assembly into position. Here we have this part, which is a kind of flow heater, where the hot water is heated as it passes through and then goes upwards. You can pour it either directly into the milk frother or right into the main brew piston. And we also have a screw here, up here on the plate. Of course, we'll remove that as well. The switch for we just pull it out. We can't just pull this one out. There's a safety catch inside. Now you can pull it out here. It's just a bit tricky, so we'll press in a little at the back and pull it out. There we go, exactly. And that's what it looks like. So, and now you can simply pull it straight out now. There's a sealing ring on the back, still attached. That's nice because it's the same when installing it. Alright, that means there is nothing left at the front now. At this point you could basically lift the plate and carefully pull it out upwards, because the control block is still positioned at the front here, and then it hooks in at the back. So we'll carefully pull it out upwards. There's no need to worry, there are no cables or anything attached. We'll loosen these two screws here, the lower one and the upper one. And now we can carefully unclip this piece right here. And it is very important to make sure you pull it straight out in a downward motion. That means we have to lift the machine and then pull the part out. So that's the next part. Now we still need to remove the control block here. That means we'll do it right up here. Now loosen these two small screws as well. Also Phillips head, and of course hold it in place right away, otherwise it'll fall out on us. So now we can simply take it off. Careful, there's a cable attached. As for this cable right here, you have the option to either carefully thread it out and disconnect it, or you can simply choose to leave it hanging right where it is. If you are being very careful with your movements, then nothing usually happens during the process. Now we've already got this part up here. In this assembly, the bridge wood is already behind it. Now we still have to unscrew this here, the two screws as well, and then we can also remove the front part here. Not here, so be careful not to push this up, because there's a spring and a ball back here. And if you push it up, the ball will pop out and the spring will be gone. I'll show you that again later. So now let's loosen this again. And this here, at this point you can carefully take out the whole unit here, and you can either pull off the rubber hose right here, or we could also pull it off from this side. I will go ahead and pull it off here now. And then we can carefully set this component aside for now as well. Now we have to go ahead and disconnect this specific hose here on the side, the one that goes directly to the outlet. It also needs to be pulled off because it leads straight to the brew chamber, the brew piston. So now it starts to get quite interesting again. Now we have these white colored hoses located right here, which are firmly attached with these clips. For that, a pair of needle nose pliers is recommended because you can use them to pull out the clips. Just pull them out with that. These clips, here we have just pulled one of them out now. Number 1, number 2, and number 3, all in total. And now you can unhook the hoses. It's easy. There is a part attached at the front where the clips are fixed in place. Then we'll try to pull the hose out here first. We need to pull it out. Of course, we'll have to put it back in later. So we need to remember where this hose was attached. Based on the length, you can usually guess exactly where the hoses were connected. Please don't squeeze too hard with the pliers because we don't want to crush the hose. Next, we are going to loosen the 2 connections up here from the brew group. You can't just pull them off, that doesn't work. That means we have to use a standard flathead screwdriver or needle nose pliers to carefully press down on the small plastic locking tab in order to successfully and safely be able to do that. Right back here in the corner, there's a tiny earwig crawling around. As I said, if you just lay the cables aside like this, you can see which is the top and which is the bottom. If not, just put a piece of tape here. Put a little flag here so you know, that was the top and that was the bottom. Now we'll loosen the 2 Allen screws. Now we've removed these 2. Now we have to do the same thing on the other side. That means we have to turn the machine a bit. And here's the hole as well, but here the unit is in front of it. That means I also have to unscrew the unit now so that I can reach my screw hole. Otherwise it won't work. I hope that does something now. If I finish unscrewing this, at least I can finally get access to the hole. Yes, honestly, that is definitely good enough for me. Yeah, that's good enough for me then. I don't have to take anything apart in a big way, I just move it to the side, and then I can get in here already. So, and now you can very carefully begin the process. As I said, you can remove the impact, but you can also, I'm just pulling it through here. We'll have to thread it back in again, that's it. Or take it off, we can take it off. Come on, damn it. So this is now the brew group. Believe it or not, this is the incredible result of drinking over 8,000 individual cups of coffee. The brew chamber is completely filthy, there's a lot of grounds in there. And the brew chamber is designed so that up front, through these holes, the water is pressed out. Alright, now watch, I'll show you. Here we have the brew piston, and here we have the brew chamber. Now the brew piston basically moves in. Well, not the brew piston is fixed, as you saw, the brew chamber. The brew chamber now moves into the brew piston. That means first this needs to be open so that the piston moves down. Yeah, let's do it like this. So now, as you can see, the brew chamber comes right up here, yes, with the fresh coffee grounds inside. And now it moves, let's see, exactly like this. That is precisely how we have set it up at home, so just give me a moment so that we have it looking exactly the same, which is quite clever. Down below, that fits perfectly. That is the fixed unit, and now here comes the piston. The brew chamber now comes all the way up and basically moves directly into the mechanism. So it moves right in here, yes. Normally it actually goes a bit further than this, okay? So, and then water comes out of this unit here, yes, and the water is then basically pressed through the coffee and then comes out at the front. And that's not working, there's some kind of problem. So, And we can also see what the problem is because we can see here that everything is covered with coffee residue. Quickly spotless and clean inside, but as I said, coffee gradually gets greasy over time, and after 8,000 cups that can happen. But why does something like this happen? When the coffee machine is descaled, not a single drop of descaler runs through the brew group here, not a single drop of this descaler. It's just that the descaler reaches the flow through heater where the water is heated up, and then it is flushed out at the top through the milk frother, so that's the entire descaling path. Now I'm going to try to unscrew the brew group here at these two screws. Let's take a closer look to see what's going on over there. It's a bit, who's clogging it all up? The tiny holes are still working fine so far, but that's definitely not the main cause. The real cause is actually found in the brew group itself. If I reach in and touch it here now, you can immediately see the residue on my fingers. It's already really done for. So now, let's pull the sealing ring off for a moment. Now let's see if we can unscrew something else here. I hope it works. Be careful, there are some springs in there. There is actually a very substantial amount of coffee inside this container here. Just take a quick look at this right now. Do you see all that coffee in there? It's like a retaining ring, I'd say. We need to get that out of here first. Alright. I've got it. It's basically like a, Keep it safe. Be careful not to lose it. We still need to remove the valve up here. That's what's there. There's another one in the bus. So we probably need to take this part out. And right down here as well. Alright, now let's try to push something up here. Let's see if that works. It works. That works. Now we can take the unit out from up here. That's great. Down here and there where the hose is, do we now have another screw like that? There's another torque screw there, and we have to unscrew that one too, of course. Still. Now I am very slowly and carefully extracting the bridge timber out. Okay, so now you can clearly see it right here on the screen. This is the café au lait, which is a classic and smooth style of coffee served with warm milk. All that muck is actually coffee. And that is the reason why it does not seem to work. We're going to clean all of this thoroughly now. Also in here, the holes are important. Here these holes are still okay, but here the holes where the springs are, you can see exactly how much gunk is trapped in there. I could actually take out the metal springs. I just shook the spring right into my hand now. You can already see what it looks like, just how the spring looks when I slowly run my finger over it. This is all full of coffee. And nobody sees that. That's really inside the machine. That's actual sludge. So, my friends, I've prepared something a bit different here. Namely, I've got a large ceramic bowl of greasy water here. Unfortunately, we actually need a significant amount of grease, because as I said, it's quite pretty greasy. And without grease, you can't dissolve the grease that's inside. That's why you need a bowl like this, and it has to be nice and deep. Then a brush, if possible a new brush, so not one that's already been used. It really should be new. With that, you can brush everything out. So first I'm going to soak everything in here so that everything gets nice and clean in the water. Here are the channels, of course. I'll show you that again in a close-up. There are these channels inside, and they're naturally full of coffee. It's like a dam. No water can get through, and that's why it's a problem. So I'll bring you closer now so you can see it better. Of course, I can forget about the tablecloth now. It has so many coffee stains, but at least the coffee doesn't leave wine stains. We can also just put the ring in as well. And this is the most important part here. Here you can also see these specific types of channels where everything runs through, and that's exactly where it gets clogged. For example, here at the back I have a clump. There's a clump back here. The whole place is completely full of coffee grounds. Everything really needs to be cleaned up. And that is exactly what we have this brush for. Then we can nicely clean this up. There we go. Alright friends, I'm pretty much done now. I've cleaned everything. It's important that you can clearly see the holes again. That worked really well with compressed air, of course. Naturally, I rinsed it again and blew it dry afterwards. So you really do need compressed air, because otherwise you'd have to poke through everything with a needle. A bit of compressed air definitely doesn't hurt. So everything is clean now. Now we'll put everything back together nicely. You need to be careful here. For example, I noticed with this part that a gasket had slipped out of place. It wasn't sitting here, but was somewhere in between. I don't know how that could have happened. Regardless of the situation, I've placed it on there now. Of course, I don't know if that was the decisive factor, but I put it where I think it rightfully belongs. Okay. Alright, now we'll just reassemble everything in reverse order. So now it's nicely back in place. And now, of course, we'll put this all back together here. That means that this one goes right over here, and then this one goes right over here. Nice and clean. Now, quick as a flash. Good. And now it's properly attached again, just as it should be. So now we take this back in here, once again using this long screw, and of course, then screw it firmly back into place. Just like we took it apart, we put it back together, and that's no problem at all. Alright, so I'll just put this thing back together now, and then we'll see what's next. So my dear friends, this is now the Brew piston. Of course, it looks entirely different now from how it was before. As we saw before, I've put it all back together now. Please remember to check the small rubber gasket. And also this one up here. When you tighten the Allen screws, make sure that everything is securely and properly seated back in its original place. Then looking down here, what is really important to verify is this little metal retaining ring. You must make sure that it is attached again. So as I said, just like you, I took it apart, put it back together the same way. Alright, now I'm going to put the brew group back in up there and reconnect the hoses, get everything set up, finish everything, and then we'll see each other again for the test. Okay, I need to jump in here again for a moment. I've now put the brew group in, connected it. I've got the hoses all set up, the cover is already on, and now this final part goes back on. It's important here that the hose is also routed back down here into the nub through this hole, and then into the inlet as well. If you ever need to take this out, this here is a sliding mechanism for the cup, for adjusting the cup height. You can unhook the mechanism by sliding it upwards, but please be careful and take extra care. There is a small metal ball located right up here, basically a cap with a spring behind it. That means if you just push it up, the spring will likely fly out and get lost, and you probably won't be able to find it again. Just a tip, but actually you don't need to do that. You can just leave it as it is, and that's fine. I'll keep putting this thing back together now. Alright friends, I've now put the whole thing back together. As I said, lay out the parts individually as you take them apart. I've shown you how it's done. Lay out the parts and then reassemble everything in exactly the reverse order. Nothing can go wrong at all. It's important that the bridge spaces, that everything has been properly done by yourself and that the seals are back in place, and so on and so forth. Alright, I've now completely reassembled everything, and now I'm going to plug it in here, then I'll turn it on. Wait for the heating process. That's how it should appear. Very nice. I'm curious, now it gets interesting. So, I'm curious. Oh, here we go. The suspense is rising. The herbs are still good so far. Yes, indeed. Very nice, and it's running again, and we've also saved on the cost. Just imagine if we had had to take the machine in for repair. But what I also have to say, if you still have a warranty on the machine, then definitely do not open it, because otherwise you'll lose your warranty. But this machine here is already 3 years old. Or 4, I think, maybe 3. And I don't have a warranty on it anymore. So, as I said, 8,000 cups have now been brewed, and I hope the next 8,000 will work as well. Everything that has broken so far. On this machine, if something was broken, I replaced it. Otherwise, everything is top notch. In any case, the coffee tastes good. Luckily, the machine is still completely undamaged. All that's left for me to say is thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed to me yet, feel free to do so. Of course, the advantage is that you won't miss any of my future videos. I've linked all the tools and materials for this video again below in the product description or in the video description. Thank you for watching. We'll see each other in the next video. Goodbye.